What if every living being was created with a purpose, no matter how small? That one question, that single reflective question, that's the starting point for the amazing source material you shared with us. And today, we're not really looking at a historical timeline. Instead, it's this incredibly concise piece of narrative wisdom, a kind of philosophical grounding from ideas in the Brahma Purana.
It really is a foundational framework. I mean, so many creation stories, they focus on the physics, the chronology of it all.
Right.
But this one, it just shifts the whole conversation immediately. It's not about creation as structure like time and space, but creation as an act of meaning, systemic integrity.
And that's exactly our mission for this deep dive.
Mm.
We're going to unpack this idea of, well, sacred architecture. We want to analyze how diversity, according to this text, isn't just a side effect of creation.
No, it's the deliberate foundation.
The deliberate foundation for a flourishing system. And maybe most importantly, why comparison is singled out as the one ultimate threat to that balance. We're really trying to get to the deepest insights on what makes a system stable.
What's so powerful here is that the wisdom lays out a blueprint for a perfect system, and then it tells us exactly what the failure point is.
Oh, that's interesting.
The problem isn't the external design, it's internal. It's human nature.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the context of creation. So once the initial structure, the order of the universe, was set, the text says the focus shifted. It shifted to life itself. And creating life, it seems, required three things all working together: diversity, interaction, and inherent meaning for every single piece. It couldn't just be uniform.
No, because that would be stability without life. The need for diversity is the essential precondition for anything dynamic. Brahma's creation wasn't mass production.
Specificity.
Exactly, specificity. Designing an environment where all the parts have to rely on each other. I mean, think about it. If everything were strong, nothing would ever need protection. If everything were gentle, nothing would ever change.
Right. And the text really emphasizes the scale of this. It says, living beings emerged in countless forms. But it moves past just the numbers really quickly to define the nature of that diversity.
It does.
It gives us these four critical archetypes that seem to cover the whole spectrum of what's needed. Some were strong, some gentle, some swift, some still. These aren't just descriptions, are they? They feel more like foundational roles.
And that leads right to the foundational principle. No form existed without purpose. What's fascinating here is that purpose is assigned right at the moment of creation.
So it's not something you have to go find.
You don't have to find it. It's the fundamental reason you exist. It means no living thing has to search for its inherent worth. They just have to realize it and then uphold the worth they already have.
So you have this inherently meaningful universe from the get-go. A lack of purpose isn't even an option, only the neglect of purpose. And if you look at those categories, strong, gentle, swift, still, you can immediately see the raw components of a complete resilient ecosystem. But you also see the potential for a lot of friction if those traits aren't valued equally.
That potential for friction is exactly why establishing purpose from the start is so significant. The diversity itself guarantees a necessary function for the whole system. The source suggests this delicate balance. If the strong didn't exist, who would build or defend?
And if the gentle didn't exist, who would nurture or mediate?
Precisely. The initial state is balanced because every single distinct piece is functionally necessary.
But I have to ask, if you have countless different forms, each with its own unique purpose, how does that not just lead to chaos? I mean, we usually associate stability with things being predictable, similar.
Right.
How do these completely different natures, the strong and the gentle, the swift and the still, how do they actually come together to form a working whole?
That is the core question the narrative answers. And it's where the deep insight really lies. It asserts that harmony does not arise from sameness, but from balance among differences.
Wow.
That's the critical insight for any healthy system. Stability is found in integrating specialized functions, not in trying to eliminate specialization.
That's a direct challenge to so many modern systems, isn't it? Whether you're talking about corporate standardization or, political movements, even education.
Yeah.
We so often assume the differences create weakness.
They do.
But this text says the strength of the whole architecture is the differences.
It is. And the mechanism for that balance is explained very simply. Each being contributes to the whole by fulfilling its own role. If the swift is swift and the still is still, the system is stable. It establishes this principle of shared responsibility.
Where the value is in the contribution
The
itself.
value is entirely in the contribution, yeah.
Yeah.
Regardless of how, visible or powerful that contribution might seem from the outside.
Let's try to make this concrete. Take the idea of the still. In a modern context, that could be what? The reflective thinker, the long-term planner,
Hmm.
the person who conserves resources.
Exactly. Now imagine a system where only swiftness is valued,
Yeah.
innovation, rapid execution, constant movement.
The quarterly results model.
Right. If the still disappear, the system gains speed, but it loses its foundations. It just accelerates toward, well, who knows where, because it's lost its capacity for preservation, for reflection, for any kind of long-term structural maintenance. And that's how the structure collapses.
Not from an outside force.
Not at all. It collapses from the loss of an internal stabilizing function.
It really forces you to rethink what efficiency even means. We often chase efficiency through uniformity. We try to standardize roles to minimize variation, but this ancient model is suggesting that resilience, real long-term balance, is achieved by actively integrating and protecting the function of every single archetype.
The integration is the key. And that brings us to the flat hierarchy, which is just essential context for understanding how the system eventually breaks down.
Okay.
The narrative explicitly says that Brahma did not place one life form above another. This means there is a fundamental flat hierarchy of intrinsic value. Every role, strong, gentle, swift, or still, it carries the exact same worth because the system needs all of them equally to be whole.
And that fact, the lack of any imposed ranking, that's what makes the conflict that comes later so important for us to study. If the creator didn't establish a ranking system, then any ranking, any perceived superiority or inferiority, it must be creation of the beings themselves.
It's a self-inflicted wound, yes.
Right.
And that leads us right into the architecture of conflict and imbalance, which is, I think, the most actionable lesson here. If the external structure is perfectly balanced, how does it fall apart?
The source identifies the failure not in the structure, but in internal perception. Conflict emerged only when beings compared themselves or forgot their place within the larger system.
Comparison is the poison. It has to be, because it fundamentally rejects the entire premise of this sacred architecture.
How so?
The moment one being looks at its own specific necessary function, let's say gentle, and decides that another being's function, say strong, is inherently better, they've just denied the value assigned at creation, they deny their own unique contribution, and in doing so, they create an existential crisis within the system.
Okay, but let's pause and address a common modern objection here. Isn't some level of comparison or competition necessary? For ambition, for growth, for innovation, is this text suggesting that all ambition is destructive?
That's a really critical distinction to make. No, the text isn't condemning healthy competition or growth within one's purpose. A swift being trying to be swifter. That's growth.
A strong being getting more resilient.
That's growth. The problem, as is framed here, is destructive comparison. It's the abandonment of your own nature driven by envy of another's nature. It's when the gentle being decides its patience is useless and tries to become strong. It fails at both, and now it's left the system without a vital function.
So it's not the desire to improve, it's the desire to be something you fundamentally are not. And in doing that, you neglect the necessary role you are meant to play. The text is very direct. Comparison leads to imbalance. Cooperation leads to harmony.
It is.
Imbalance isn't a design flaw. It's an operational failure driven by, what? Status anxiety.
That's a great way to put it. And that clarifies the second condition, forgetting their place. This isn't about, maintaining inferiority. It's about neglecting your specific purpose. Strong, gentle, swift, or still, because you're trying to adopt the status, not the function, of someone you envy.
So when the gentle being stops mediating to go chase after strength, they haven't just changed roles.
No, they've created a vacuum. The mediation function of the entire ecosystem is just gone.
It's about ignoring your inherent nature. And by doing that, you neglect your essential contribution to the shared responsibility of the whole. The moment a necessary function disappears because the person who's supposed to be doing it is busy trying to be someone else, the balance just tips toward collapse.
The profound simplicity of it is that the only way to fail the system is to stop being your authentic, necessary self. The entire path to dysfunction begins with one internal psychological decision: to prioritize comparative status over contributory function.
Okay, let's take this ancient wisdom and bring it right into the listener's world. We've established the system needs the strong, the gentle, the swift, and the still. How does this actually translate into, say, an organizational structure or even our personal careers?
Well, we can map those archetypes onto modern roles pretty easily and see the imbalance in action. The swift are your innovators, your marketers, the execution teams.
The people who get things done.
Right. The strong are the infrastructure, finance, the operations managers. The gentle might be HR, client care, or the internal culture specialists. And the still, they're your strategy, your R&D, your long-term governance.
And so often, in modern life, the swift and the strong are rewarded and valued most visibly. They're the ones generating immediate output or maintaining the immediate structure.
Precisely. And if we start comparing the long-term strategist to the swift, the salesperson who just hit a huge quarterly target, the strategy starts to feel undervalued. So they might start abandoning their necessary role of stillness and reflection to try and do some swift, high-visibility activity.
And when that happens,
When the strategy function is neglected in favor of the quarterly hustle, the entire organization loses its direction. Sales might be high for a little while, but the whole thing is adrift.
so the final distillation of this wisdom, the blueprint for success that the narrative gives us, it has to be this. Life flourishes when diversity is respected and responsibility is shared. This brings us back to those two pillars.
Pillar number one is respecting diversity. It's recognizing that differences are not weaknesses. They are assets that are necessary for the larger system, the whole, to thrive. You have to protect the gentle function just as fiercely as you protect the strong function, because the system needs both to survive stress over time.
And pillar number two, shared responsibility, which is understanding that fulfilling your unique inherent role, whether it's strategic stillness or rapid swiftness, is a contribution of equal importance.
Yes. The moment you start defining success by the type of contribution rather than the fact of the contribution, you invite the very comparison that leads to imbalance.
The aha moment then for you, the learner, is realizing that the shortcut to harmony isn't forcing everything to be uniform.
Yeah.
That's exhausting and impossible.
Right. The shortcut is understanding and protecting the necessary, distinct function of every piece you're given. It's about maximizing specific roles instead of minimizing differences.
That perspective it's incredibly powerful because it replaces that endless destructive cycle of comparison with the clarity of just contributing.
Yeah.
It teaches that the path to fulfillment and to systemic resilience is defined by looking inward at your purpose, not outward with envy at someone else's role.
It's a remarkable piece of philosophy. It gives us a complete understanding of why diversity shouldn't just be tolerated, but why it's fundamentally essential to life itself.
So we've journeyed from Brahma's initial creation of this inherent balanced purpose through how a stable system is built on difference, and finally we've identified comparison as the single internal decision that leads to dysfunction. That profound wisdom leaves us with one last, powerful, provocative thought to carry forward. If every being's primary contribution to the flourishing of the whole is simply to fulfill its inherent nature, what is one inherent trait, maybe the gentle part of your personality or the still part of your work, that you can stop comparing against the high visibility of the swift or strong roles and just start honoring in your own life today? Something to think about.